Let's just give this one last go, shall we?
Hello everyone, this is Story Dive, back again, reviewing, recapping, and breaking down the Easter eggs and references in more Castlevania from Netflix, this time Season 4. I've done an Easter egg breakdown for every season since Season 2, but this will probably be my last video on the Castlevania Netflix series, as the showrunners have stated that this is the final season. They may do another series in the same universe or a similar universe, and it has been hinted that this will be a Devil May Cry series, but as of now it's unconfirmed. To give you my quick review of this season, I enjoyed this one more than the previous season. Both the previous season and this season loosely follow the plot of the game Castlevania Curse of Darkness. And although both seasons were pretty far from that game, this season stuck to a bit more of the plot points, and I appreciated that. I also really liked some of the character arcs in this season. This season was a bit slow in places, but as always, the finale was epic. So without further ado, let's get to the season. In the first episode, we pick back up with Trevor and Sypha, and are given a quick recap of what they've been doing for the last 6 weeks, since the finale of Season 3, when the cult known as the Priory opened the Infinite Corridor in an attempt to bring Dracula back to their world. Of course, they were thwarted by Trevor, Sypha, and Germain, who in the process vanished into the corridor. In this episode, Trevor and Sypha seem to be, once again, riding around the countryside, battling night creatures that are still straggling around, attacking humanity. As with all the seasons, many of Castlevania's monsters are original creations, but they also throw in some night creatures that are taken directly from the games. And in this scene, it starts off with some classics, the skeleton soldiers and skeleton archers from various games. This vampire with his robes and orbs surrounding him really reminds me of the sorcerer Shaft from Symphony of the Night. These guys look a little like ghouls from various Castlevania games. Then they encounter this vampire, dispatch him, and realize he is attempting a spell which will resurrect Vlad Tepes, Dracula. So now they have to worry about Dracula being resurrected again, but that is a big part of the Curse of Darkness plot. I'm pretty sure these guys are a tribute to the gremlins from Symphony of the Night. However, they do jump around like hunchbacks from various Castlevania games. After they stop another cult from attempting to resurrect Dracula, they realize that they were calling upon one of the main characters from the Dracula game series, Death, aka the Grim Reaper, who we'll see later in the episode. And Trevor explains that he's not literally Death, he's an elemental being that feeds on death. It seems the cult was attempting to call on the Grim Reaper to resurrect Dracula. They recognize this flagstone from Targovishte, the city in Wallachia where all of this started in Season 1. They all pronounce it Targovishta in the show, but I think it's pronounced Targovishte. Romanians correct me if I'm wrong. So they return there and find it's crawling with vampires. Soon after, we're introduced to 2 new vampire characters, Varney and Rodko. I'm not going to say all the voice actors, but I have to say that Varney is voiced by the great Malcolm McDowell, and he takes his name from one of the earliest serialized vampire stories, Varney the Vampire, by James Malcolm Ryder and Thomas Peckett. Varney is also English, like the original character. Meanwhile, Alucard's depression is interrupted by a dead messenger who has sent for his help on behalf of the people of Danesti to protect them against the night creatures. Danesti is a real area in Romania like Târgoviște, but I have to suspect that the showrunners were kind of teasing us here with the name Danesti, like the character Grant Danesti, or Dynasty, from the Castlevania 3 game that we never got to see in this series. I know some people think he was the ship captain from Season 3, but they never said that character's name. Alucard decides to take them up on their offer because what else is he going to do? Meanwhile, back at Styria, the palace of the Sisterhood of Vampires, Hector is busy making his hammer so that he can create night creatures for the Sisterhood. In the last season, Hector was turned into a slave by Lenore. However, he's planting these alchemical stones around the castle, which he can channel power through, so he's plotting his escape. In this exchange between Lenore and Carmilla, Carmilla reveals her plan to take over the entire world. When she says they fought the wolf people from the north, I think it's a subtle reference to the actual novel Dracula, at the section where he says his race fought back the werewolf-like berserkers from the north. Lenore is unhappy with Carmilla's ambition, and as we later find out, Striga and Morana are as well. Rather than follow Carmilla on her quest for world domination, they'd prefer to live a simpler life with each other. As Trevor and Sypha look for shelter, Varney and Rodko unleash some night creatures on them, and we've seen these creatures before, but they do look a lot like the imps from the games. Trevor uses a scythe, which is a little foreshadowing of the character he will fight at the end of the season, And they soon discover that the vampires were targeting another group, these members of the underground court of Tergovishte, led by Zamfir, who is not a master of the pan flute in this show, but rather the head guard for the underground court. Picking back up with Isaac, he has his night creatures rebuilding the town that was controlled by the wizard that he killed in the previous season. By the way, in that video I totally missed that he'd summoned the boss Legion from Symphony of the Night. I also missed that the wizard was based on the master librarian. Isaac has a conversation with the former philosopher that he talked with in the previous season, and reveals that he's shifted his motivation. Before he wanted to resurrect Dracula and aid him in his quest to wipe out humanity, but now he's starting to realize it's actually more satisfying to build something rather than just destroy. While Striga and Marana fight Carmilla's war and begin to realize that they want nothing to do with it, they're attacked during the daylight, so Striga breaks out her day armor and takes everybody out. I have to say this suit does make her look a bit like a victory armor from various Castlevania games. Alucard arrives at Denesti, fighting these demons that look a little like Red Axe armors. We can see he's sporting his shield from Symphony of the Night, and of course he still has his sword familiar from Symphony of the Night as well, and like that game he makes ample use of his dash attack. Then he meets Greta, the head woman at Denesti, who sent him the message, and honestly she's not the nicest person, but Alucard is into it. While he's talking to her, who emerges but Saint-Germain. At the end of the last season, it seemed like he had vanished into the Infinite Corridor. As I mentioned in the previous breakdown, the Infinite Corridor is a reference to the Curse of Darkness game, but we soon get a flashback which explains exactly what he's been doing until now. There is a quick scene of Saint-Germain wearing his outfit from Curse of Darkness, and we finally get to see the loved one that he referred to in the previous season. They both wanted to travel to the Infinite Corridor, however, she was lost there while he returned back to the world. Since we last saw him in Season 3, Saint-Germain has been trapped in the Infinite Corridor, where he meets this mysterious character. Based on what happens later, she seems to be this series' version of the character Zed from Curse of Darkness. In the previous season, the character The Judge looked a lot like Zed, but it seems that was a misdirect, and this character is in fact the Zed of this series. I'll just call her Zed anyway. She basically berates Saint-Germain for not committing fully to alchemy, and persuades him to abandon his morals in order to get what he wants, which is to find his loved one. She also gives him this key which allows him to navigate the Infinite Corridor, and after this we find that Saint-Germain has become a pretty bad dude, basically abandoning any honor that he once had, and is murdering or doing whatever he has to do to help him on his quest. He even goes so far as to attempt to resurrect Dracula, and to do this he has to get inside Dracula's castle, to the spot where Dracula died in the second season and the ring was left. So he suggests that in order to protect the residents of Denesti, Alucard take them into the castle.
Perhaps the remaining persons in your charge might be moved to a more secure location, like, your castle.
And this ruse works. They all head to the castle, and on the way they even encounter some giant spiders, a standard enemy in the Castlevania games. Isaac uses his distance mirror, finally transporting his army of night creatures to Styria in order to take down the Sisterhood. And there are a lot of monsters in the scene, some of which I've mentioned in previous breakdowns, but the one that stands out the most is Abel, Isaac's innocent devil, or familiar, from the Curse of Darkness game. And he even flies around Isaac and protects him in the same way that he does in the game. Isaac runs into Hector, and although he still wants revenge on Carmilla, he realizes Hector was just a pawn, and now that he's decided to help humanity, their goals are somewhat similar. As he says, Dracula has earned his rest.
Dracula earned his rest.
Hector even cuts off his slavery ring that links him to Lenore, although he still seems sweet on her, and tells Isaac about the channel that he's placed in the castle, which Isaac then uses to create a portal straight to Carmilla. Isaac and Carmilla then face off in an epic battle, during which Isaac gets the edge, and Carmilla, in order to prevent him from having the satisfaction of killing her, commits vampire harakiri. Seeing the resulting explosion and sensing that Carmilla is gone, Striga and Marana decide that rather than take revenge, the time has come to take their own path, away from the influence of Carmilla. At Tergovishte, Sypha and Trevor realize that Zamfir is doing a horrible job leading the people of the city, and when they go to her underground court, it's more of the same. Incidentally, the password to enter the court is "We remember Radu the Black," who is supposedly the founder of Wallachia. Vlad Tepes's brother was also named Radu the Handsome. While they're down there, Trevor discovers a nifty sub-weapon. This looks like a bladed version of the cross, one of the better projectiles from the games, or perhaps it's even this boomerang from Symphony of the Night, or a kind of chakram, which is also a sub-weapon in the Castlevania games. And like those weapons, he does say it's Indian. When Trevor and Sypha finally get in to see the leaders of the court, they realize they've been dead for some time, so clearly Zamfir is cray. Varney and Rodko show up at the court and have an epic battle with Sypha and Trevor, at the end of which Zamfir sacrifices herself to protect the people of Tergovishte, and Trevor is able to take out Rodko. Unfortunately, Varney discovers the distance mirror they were hiding in the court and uses it to go to Dracula's castle, where Saint-Germain, who now has access to the castle, has been preparing for the resurrection of Dracula. He's been planting alchemical runes around the castle, and with the help of a vampire general named Germain, they have been dissecting bodies and sewing male and female parts together in a very Frankenstein-like way in order to create a host body for what they call the rebus. The rebus is a concept in alchemy, and is supposedly the alchemical magnum opus, or great work, as Zed said earlier. She explained that it is a two-souled hermaphrodite being that can control the infinite corridor, and thus it can help him find his loved one. Trevor and Sypha follow Varney through the distance mirror to Dracula's castle, where they face off with Germain's forces, who are now attacking the castle in preparation for Dracula's resurrection, and there are a few familiar enemies in this scene. These guys are clearly golems or rock monsters from various Castlevania games. This guy is clearly a Gargoth from Symphony of the Night, and this night creature kind of resembles a manticore from Aria of Sorrow. Sypha, Trevor, and Alucard all fight together against these monsters, and during the fight we see Alucard taking on his wolf form, as well as his bat form from Symphony of the Night. I really wish these guys were in the games because they're actually quite cool, but as far as I know they're original. Although this vampire does resemble the classic image of death from the games, and this one's power is a little bit like the skull form of Legion. Using multiplayer teamwork, Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard defeat Germain and all of the other vampire forces. However, it's too late. Varney appeared before Saint-Germain in order to help him, and reveals that he's actually not who we think he is. Both Varney and Zed are guises of none other than the Grim Reaper, Death, who wants to resurrect Dracula so he can keep feeding off of the death that Dracula causes. This plot twist is taken right out of the Curse of Darkness game because in that game, Zed also reveals himself to be Death as well.
That weapon! You are none other than death!
Now with the power of the Grim Reaper on his side, Saint-Germain attempts to pull Dracula and Lisa out of hell and into the host body of the rebus. But he realizes what he's doing is a mistake. Death just wants complete destruction, so in the end he has a change of heart and he helps Trevor destroy the host body. Trevor is then transported to the Infinite Corridor, where he sees that his boomerang has actually killed Saint-Germain as well. Saint-Germain gets one last look at his sweetheart, and then Trevor faces off with Death in a epic battle right out of the games. He's only immortal, but using a special dagger which he found earlier in Tergovishte, he's able to stab Death and destroy him, or at least destroy this elemental being. In the aftermath, Sypha thinks that Trevor is gone. However, in truth, the Infinite Corridor spit him out by the Danube, and in the final episode, he makes his way back to Sypha, who admits that she loves him, and he says, "I know."
I love you.
I know.
Bit of an Empire Strikes Back reference there. She also reveals that she's pregnant, which game fans will know is with Simon Belmont in the Lords of Shadow timeline. They are Simon's ancestors in the standard timeline, but regardless, Sypha and Trevor are going to be parents. Alucard decides to stay among the residents of Dynasty, thus ending his loneliness, and Lenore decides she doesn't want to be a prisoner to her vampirism or anyone else anymore, including Hector, so she goes to see the sunset, which she's heard so much about, and vanishes into dust. In the final scene, it seems that although their host body was destroyed, Dracula and Lisa somehow escaped the Infinite Corridor and Hell and check into a quaint inn. It seems they're now finally freed, and they decide to stay away from Alucard to give their son a break. Rather, they decide to go off to Whitby, England, another reference to the original Dracula novel. Whitby is where Dracula arrives in England in the novel, and also where Bram Stoker wrote much of the novel. So that is the end of the season. I would love to know your thoughts on this season. Do you think it had a fitting end? And are you disappointed there won't be a 5th season? Also, what are your thoughts on the potential spin-off? Do you think it will be Devil May Cry, or what else could it be about? Let me know what Easter eggs and game references I missed in the comments below, and check out my previous Castlevania reviews linked on the screen. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more breakdowns like this. Thanks for watching, and until next time.